Hi everyone, just an update on the monk. Haven't made too many upgrades. I upgraded a ring, um, got a different shield, um, and I leveled up a couple skill gems. Turned out pretty good. The build has its shortcomings that are really just clear speed related, and that's solely because of the mechanics of Orb, or Eye of Winter. It's insanely strong inside of indoor maps like this with the or the walls and the chaining mechanic going on for the ring. It's pretty pleasurable to play. But in big open maps, like specifically ones with breach, you start to see the shortcomings of the clear. Um, but overall, I would probably recommend it. Wouldn't level as it. I'd level as something else. It's got pretty good single target. It has uh, a little bit of setup with the get ideal single target damage. But it's not too bad, it's mostly doable. The other big factor is mana cost. Mana cost, because of the way this build is scaling, is to get the cost of the skill up as high as possible, or not the cost, rather the gem level. Currently at 34. This can go to 35 with a +1 gem, level 21 rather. That'd be the final DPS upgrade probably. One other idea a viewer gave me, or a random follower, told me to get a Mind Over Matter from Nothing Jewel, and that allows you to take these things for 40% effect of Mind Over Matter, or Arcane Surge, and this, which I think that boils out to be 17% more cast speed and 17% more mana regen, which might fix some of the sustain issues. Um, I'm not sure. It's quite expensive, and I have other build ideas I want to tackle. Um, but the single target's pretty good. This is a tier, what is this, 17 map boss with max difficulty on the Atlas. Um, yeah, so to max difficulty, and it does just fine. Specifically on bosses that are inside of indoor arenas, it does even more damage because of the chaining mechanism off forking and walls. Not sure what's going on here. There we go. But yeah, let me finish clearing the map and I'll explain everything I think is relevant to the build. And show off the skill gems and all that jazz. And excuse the bad movement. I'm trying out WASD movement for the first time today, and I see the upside, but it's just definitely different to get used to after playing with keyboard and mouse for 12 years or whatever it is at this point, or probably even longer than that because I've been playing D2. It's been a little kid. I think I forgot to play or press avatar on the boss. Oh well. Damage would have been 40% more. And it's definitely got single target covered on bosses. Okay. So in general, previous video, Winter gets bonus damage for passing over ground types, so the whole goal of the build with the Invoker is to pass or auto-crit ground types, so there I can take advantage of the extra damage, and then because it's a crit skill, I'm using Ignore Monster Elemental Res, and then because I deal tri-elemental damage, I can inflict all 3 ailments, and Unbound Avatar is typically pretty hard to ramp up, but on this build you can have it up in a couple seconds right after using it, or right when it falls off. But it gives you more elemental damage, more ailment buildup, and then better chance to inflict ailments, and it lasts for like 13 or 14 seconds with the support gem. So it's a pretty big damage boost. Okay, so that's the gist of why I went Invoker, or Monk. The gems, Sigil Power, this would ideally be from a higher level staff because it gives more spell damage per stage. So I had this set up on a weapon swap tree with duration and AoE, so the thing can last longer. But yeah, you charge up, it gives you more damage up to 4 stages, so I think with the max level staff that's 60% more spell damage. Unbound Avatar, this can have a +1 fire gem. It adds a little bit of duration per level. It's nothing too major. I think it's, so what is that, 9.9? 10, yeah, so 0.1 seconds per level. And then I have Persistence to extend that, so it's 14 seconds. Grim Feast to overheal my ES. Ghost Dance because I'm a evasion ES build. So I have 4,000 evasion, so when I get hit, I get 250 back. It's okay. Arctic Armor, I wasn't really sure what to do with the rest of my spirit, so I just chose this. I'm not sure what other links I would really mess with. This is not supposed to be in there. But the whole idea is make it freeze easier. So if a mob does somehow make it to me, this does quite a bit of damage, and it basically should immediately freeze something. So at the top end, you take 700 times 7, so 4.9k base damage at maximum stages. So it pretty much freezes anything that hits you. Then I have some crit gems because it doesn't hit very often. This gem is pretty much always up, and then when it does hit, it has a huge amount of crit multiplier. I think it should be around, I guess we can just look at this one and add 100. So it's almost at 5x damage from crit multi. Temp chains, make it bigger, increase the effect of the curse. This slows it, and then burning inscription. So this creates burning ground when you cast. So it adds the burning ground, so I can shoot Eye of Winter through that. So it gets the bonus or extra 50% damage as fire. And that's also on the weapon swap tree. So when I cast it, it gets bigger, more duration, it hinders the enemies, some slight curse effect. Then I also took this to make the curse last longer, so I don't want to recast it as often. It also has some energy shield mechanics with the mobs it's on. I don't really find this super relevant. Eye of Winter, swap my weapon, there we go. So plus 13 from gear and plus 1 from support. So I've considered casting Inspiration because the mana cost is absurd. So I could cast this twice without Inspiration. About 3 times with Inspiration, not accounting for mana regen. Plus 1 level of cold gems. This is roughly a 20% damage multiplier. When you math it out, assuming you can aim your projectiles perfectly. So it can be a single target bonus, plus it's also potentially a clear helper, because 8 additional projectiles and they all fork 3 additional times. That creates quite a bit of extras. I think I definitely had the wrong, I think this was supposed to be in there. This was supposed to be in there. Yeah. So I did that whole map with the wrong gem. That's pretty sweet. Combat Frenzy, and then Charge Infusion. So the tech I'm using is Combat Frenzy gives you a Frenzy Charge anytime you freeze an enemy, or every like 2 seconds. And then I have Profusion in here, and Clarity. The Clarity just can be on any Spirit Gem, but this is the Generate Power Charges via Resonance. So Resonance converts or flops what charges you gain when you gain a charge. So in this case, Frenzy turns into power charges. And then I'm using Charge Infusion to help my critical strike chance out. This gives you 17% more critical strike chance while you have a power charge. So during mapping, this is up basically the whole fight, and then or during the whole map. And then during bosses, most bosses I can freeze, and the power charge lasts for like 20 seconds. So it's, or I'm sorry, uh, I freeze bosses often enough where this is up. Um, it's not up all the time, so take 5 seconds of a little bit of burst of damage. And then Flame Wall. Flame Wall is batshit crazy with Eye of Winter. Um, so with I have Fortress, plus level of gems, then Cascade, and this is also on my weapon swap tree. So this lasts for a long time, and then when you shoot Eye of Winter through this, each projectile that flies through that can get the bonus damage. And if you notice here, it's 113 to 161 added fire damage to projectiles. And then if you look here, that's basically the same damage of Eye of Winter. So when Eye of Winter travels through this, it also, I'm not sure if this gets multiplied by the gain as extra when it travels over burning ground or shock ground or freezing ground, but this is essentially double damage for the skill, assuming that you can line it up correctly. Um, so that covers the gems. The gear, essentially you just want extra damage as lightning anywhere you can get this stat. I believe this can roll up to 30 on a really ideal wand. This gives you the lightning damage so you can shock enemies, and then also create shock ground. And then the rest you want crit strike chance. I chose to go crit multi. You could go with cast speed or mana regen, but it's really limited to whatever the market has to offer. Gloves are shoehorning in some rarity, critical damage bonus, mana, then ES. Ideally, this would have higher ES evasion. This is a big part of the build, so this enables the chain slash fork mechanic. Not really sure if this is intended or not, but this essentially makes your abilities fork, and because in the passive tree I have these nodes, additional chance to fork, I have 100%, so when I fork I create 3 additional projectiles, and then I have the chain nodes here, and then I should have a jewel appear with chain. So when a projectile chains off a wall, after a projectile forks, it can chain off a wall and hit the same target again. For bosses, that can create a lot of extra damage. So if I were to hit a boss and a wildfire would proc, it would shoot out 8 additional bolts, which then would all fork. So it turns into 3 additional projectiles, so it's 24. And then in theory, if all those would roll a chain off the terrain and then hit the mob, that's a huge piece of extra bonus damage that the skill usually doesn't get. Um, I don't know if this is an oversight or not, but this ring is supposed to disable chain, but I don't know if chaining off walls is the same, because like the support gem is called Ricochet, and then there's a chain support gem, so maybe they're counted as different mechanics. But either way, this works, and it enables quite a bit of extra damage, and it helps clear. Um, for the chest piece, it's just evasion, yes. I chose extra spirit. Helmet is as high as ES you can get with rarity and critical strike chance. I had to get some intelligence because I was a little short on the tree for the level 20 gem. Amulet, big defensive amulet with plus gems, and I anointed heavy ammunition, which is by far not the best in slot, but it is the cheapest. This is like 5 exalts, if that, and the distilled emotions. If I wanted to do the big damage one, it'd probably be climate change for 25% extra as fire against frozen enemies, or plus 1 level of gems. The problem with this one is I'm already having mana sustain issues, and this would go up like another 70 mana per cast or something like that, so it's really not sustainable. Maybe in the future if they fix mana cost, it'd be better. And on mana cost, I've also taken all the nodes I can that are around me to reduce the mana cost. So this is with inspiration. And what is this? 8, 16, 33%. So 33% reduced, and then 40% less cost, and it still costs 440 mana a cast, and that's with some support gems. I don't think any of these have multipliers. Or Wildfire might. Yeah, Wildfire has 120. So definitely a lot of mana. Big bummer. Not a big fan of how they have mana balanced. Uh, Ring is just res, cast speed, and mana regen as much as possible. This one has cold damage, so that's a nice little add. Boots, movement speed, res, intelligence, ingenuity, because it's the best belt in the game for basically any build that doesn't need another unique belt. This yeah, this is just best in slot for everything. Shield is spell damage as much energy shield and mana as you can get. Critical strike chance, res. I guess you could get one mana regen or cast speed. I needed res to fix some of my resistances, which aren't perfect. For instance, LE weakness maps are a little scary at the moment. It is fixable, just simply better gear. Or mostly a better ring or a better roll belt would help that. And regarding jewels, this is the only unique one using currently is Aya Winter Prism of Belief, which is just raw damage. Other jewels are spell damage, max ES, mana regen, critical damage. I think that's pretty much the case for all of them. Chance to shock, but roughly the same jewel. Same jewel up here. Oh, mana on kill. This helps you sustain mana during maps. And then chain additional time, and then double damage increase rolls. The double damage or increased damage on jewels is pretty important because the tree is actually starved for sources of increased damage. It's got a lot of more multipliers if you're a crit multi. So let's take an example right here. So this one you think would be a big damage node, right? So it's 5% extra. That's like a 3% damage increase. But if I were to go here, 10% increased damage is almost just as good as 5% more damage as cold. So yeah, more spell damage, projectile damage, elemental damage, cold damage. Preferably not cold because it's a tri-ele build at the end of the day. You really want to stick to generic types like projectile damage, elemental damage, spell damage, or increased damage if that exists. That is ideal. I think that's mostly unique interactions here. Oh, I took Internal Youth to help sustain ES if what if it does get low. This gives me kind of an oh crap button. And then these nodes would be the only ones that are kind of unique. If I got more fire damage, I would take this, but these become pretty efficient. Assuming you're tri-ele, you can inflict all three ailments. This is so for 1, 2, 3. You get 120 damage for 6 points, so 20 damage each. It's pretty efficient. I think that should pretty much cover everything. I already talked about the Mind Over Matter node, the Anoints, better gear. It's pretty straightforward. But yeah, this is the Aya Winter Monk. I would not level as this. I would probably wait till 70, 75 before I swapped into it and just use like Spark or some generic projectile spell. Aya Winter's problem while leveling is that it has really low base damage. However, it has really high crit and it inflicts critical weakness, so it really wants you to lean into the playing it as a crit build. But with generally speaking, with any crit style build in Path of Exile, they're usually hard to get off the ground because your tree solving defensives while getting crit damage and critical strike chance is usually challenging. You kind of get pulled into only solving one problem at a time until you get enough levels or gear where you can kind of solve them all. So again, just I wouldn't recommend it. It's also a level 52 spell. I leveled up as Arc because I wanted to try how that was versus Spark. It's okay. Spark is by far a better leveling skill, but I did play this from level 52 onwards, and it does work. I generally play builds as soon as I can to help me get a feel for what they need, but I would not recommend this spell as a leveling ability. from 52. I'd probably wait till 75 again, just to reiterate that point. It had its shortcomings. Yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys like it. Comment if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to get them answered.